Right. So now we come into Lamai, the essay questions of the Unit 1 paper. Now, one thing when it comes to essay questions, something that I have seen most of y'all, where y'all mess up is Lamai, is your answer structure. Right? Y'all don't read the question verb properly. So I'll start with a little bit of intro on that, and then we'll get into the questions. So every question, Lamai, has a question verb, right? There are certain questions that asks you what, right? Like, for example, the question over here. There are certain questions that will say list. There are certain questions that will say mention. There are questions that will say, Lamai, for example, state, right? There are questions like that. Then there are questions that will, for example, say outline. There are questions that will say, for example, distinguish. There will be questions that will say differentiate, but in econ, you rarely find differentiate questions. Okay, most likely it will be the word distinguish. There will be questions, Lamai, that will, for example, say briefly explain. Briefly explain. There are questions that will say explain. So all of these different question verbs, Lamai, require different styles of writing and different amounts of writing. Now, that is a point that you all should improve, especially in this past paper class and especially in any paper class that is there. Because it's not about learning the theory anymore. It's about how do you properly figure out the question? How do you write based on that? Okay. So whenever you get a question, the first thing that you will do is, Lamai, figure out what is the question verb. Are they asking you to list? Is it state? Is it outline? Is it briefly explain? Is it explain? What are they asking you is one thing that you have to figure out. Okay. So I'll just simply give you outline. More and more we do, I'll give you all more details. So if the question verb, Lamai, says what, a list, mention, state, any four of this, you can write, Lamai, short points. You can give your answer in point form. Let's say if the question says, state the reasons for something. And 4 points, it's a 4-mark question, and then give 4 points. Or if they say, okay, list something, mention, you can write the answer in point form. When the question verb, Lamai, says outline, now outline is a little bit more than state. Outline also you will write points. But for outline, Lamai, you will write longer points, longer detailed points, right? So when we do questions, I will show you all, Lamai. For now, examples, I'll come to it. Then we do questions. So outline will be more longer detailed parts. Now, if the question verb, Lamai, says something like differentiate, if it says something like differentiate, and maybe you can draw like a table and show the difference between this and this. But in econ, Lamai, you will rarely find a question that says differentiate. It will most likely come in the format of distinguish. To write a distinguish, you can either write it in a para format or there is a detailed point format. I'll again come to it, Lamai, when we do questions. I'll show you examples of how you can write. And I'm just giving you a whole thing. Or detailed points. And that is that. Then there are questions that will say briefly explain. Briefly explain means don't explain a lot. Briefly explain. So maybe briefly explain, Lamai, those might be like, let's say, small paragraphs. So let's say if the question says, okay, briefly explain the reasons for the law of demand. So then you all know, okay, there are 2 reasons for the law of demand: income effect, substitution effect. Okay, we'll continue unit number 1. Briefly explain the characteristics of a market economy. So if they say state the characteristics of market economy, on the point. Outline the characteristics, longer points. Briefly explain, let's say if they say briefly explain the characteristics of a market economy, ideally one characteristic, Lamai, there is no fixed amount of lines, but I'm just giving you like quantity of like how much you should write. So maybe you need to write your answer in a para format. And ideally, let's say it's like, it can differ, right? How much of paragraphs, how much you should write will depend on the question. But I'm saying, Lamai, let's say if it's a 4-mark question and saying, briefly explain the characteristics of a market economy, you might have to briefly explain 4 characteristics. Maybe you can say, okay, talk about price mechanism, talk about private ownership, talk about, let's say, I don't know, in a market economy, what else can you say? Let's say profit motive. Let's say there is income inequality, whatever that you're writing. So ideally, a 3 to 4 line para per point, right? So per point, yes, consumer sovereignty, maybe a 3 to 4 line paragraph per point. So one 3 to 4 line paragraph talking about price mechanism. One 3 to 4 line paragraph talking about private sector ownership. One 3 to 4 line paragraph talking about, let's say, consumer sovereignty. And that is briefly explained, not huge paragraphs. Break your answer. Please don't put everything in one, right? 3 to 4 line paragraphs. But it will differ. Now, there are some questions. Maybe you might only write 2 paragraphs, right? So we'll see. That depends on the question. You can figure that out. Then the final one is explain. So explain, you will go in detail. So again, it will be in more para format. There is no amount of lines. I'm just giving a broad thing. Don't say, Arshad sir said, briefly explain, write only 3 lines. There is nothing like that. Just roughly giving you all idea so that you all don't overwrite. Sometimes I have seen questions where it says briefly explain, you have written around 1.5 pages. So don't do that, right? The line, just because you write 3 to 4 lines, that doesn't guarantee you that you're going to get the full points, full marks also. Right? So para, but longer paras. So for example, maybe one para can be like, let's say around 6 to 7 line para, or maybe like a 5 to 7 line para. It could be something like that, right? Outline, I feel a little bit more than a short point is better, right? Now, for example, I'll say the difference between outline and list lamai. Let's say if you're writing the characteristics of a market economy in a list question, you will just say price mechanism. It's a using of price mechanism. In an outline question, you will say a market economy would use price mechanism for decision coordination. Or you can say a market economy will answer the 3 basic economic problems based on price mechanism. That is outline. State, you will just say use of price mechanism. That's just the difference. Not a big difference now. It's just a little bit expanded for something like an outline thing. For explain, you don't have to really go one full page also. It depends. It depends on the question, because there are some questions you can't explain. You can't really write 1 page about it. So, but I'm just roughly giving you the story there. Right? So remember, when you get a question, right, we will do questions. I'm just setting the tone before we do. When you get a question, my first thing you do is figure out the question verb. Right? What are they asking? Is it what? Is it list? Is it briefly explain? First, figure out that. Okay. Once you figure out that, now, Lamai, you need to break the question down and you need to see how are they going to give you marks. Because in your A-level paper, Lamai, they will only give you the overall mark. The breakdown of marks will not be given. In A-levels in econ, the lowest possible mark they can give you is half a mark for something. There is nothing called a quarter mark. And I'll just show you how I will think and break this down. We'll look at this question. This question says, what are the 4 categories of economic resources? And that is one part of the question. Another part of the question says, give an example of a resource for each category. So how I will break this 4 marks is, I think they will allocate 4 categories of resources. They will allocate 2 marks for this part. Okay. How will they allocate 2 marks for this? There are 4 resources: land, labor, capital, entrepreneurship. For each of this, they will give me half a mark. That's how the 2 marks will get allocated. And now you need to know this. So you need to think. Then the remaining 2 marks will be for what? Will be for examples. So for each of land, labor, capital, entrepreneurship, I have to give an example. So then I have to give 4 examples, half a mark per example. That's how the balance 2 marks gets allocated. You figure out the question verb, then you think of how marks will be allocated. Then you start writing. Because otherwise what happens is you all write nonsense. You end up writing, I saw now, even in this term exam that you all did recently, I saw you all write complete nonsense. Some questions, boru liyala. Yo, there is some questions. Some people are very easy to mark your papers. 5 questions. A majority of your questions are blank. Very nice, right? Very easy to mark the papers. 2 minutes are enough to mark your paper. Most are blank. Very good. Some of you all have written extra questions also, but annoying to mark, but still we mark. We cut off the ones with the lower mark. Some of you all have been very cunning. They have a section A and section B. Minimum do 2 questions from each part. Some of you all have done 4 questions from subsection A and 1 question from subsection B, thinking that we will not notice. So then one entire question will be cut off. Right. So be careful with how you select your questions, but just have that in mind. Right. So then we'll start with this question first, and then just you can maybe take a screenshot of this also, Lamai. Eventually, I will show you how it works. Right. So question number 1, easy one, Lamai. What are the 4 categories of economic resources? If I have to tell you this, then there is a problem. So land, labor, capital, entrepreneurship. Now give me examples. For land, what can you say? Now the question is what? No. So what means you can write point form. You don't have to explain. Land, example, maybe a forest, animals. Okay. So one example is enough. Maybe if you want, you can write animals. Okay. Labor, maybe for example, a teacher, carpenter, right? Someone who is doing physical mental effort, right? So let's say teacher, carpenter. Rather than saying employee, Lamai, I will write. It would be better if you can be more specific rather than saying just saying employee. For capital, is buildings, machines, right? You can give. For entrepreneur, no, don't say natural resources. Then that is wrong. That's not example. That is what labor, what land is. So for entrepreneur, maybe you can say something like, don't give a name of a person, right? But instead, maybe you can say, let's say a business owner. If you want to give a name, you can say a business owner like this one. And that would be a better thing. Don't give shareholders and all that. Don't go there. Just say something like this. Is the example should be connected? Connected to what? You can say owner of a bakery. That is perfectly fine, right? Owner of this one, owner of let's say a clothing store. And those are fine. No, the 4 examples don't have to be connected. Okay. Those are skills of our CEO, no, CEO is not an entrepreneur. CEO is different, entrepreneur is different. For entrepreneurship, you can't give entrepreneur as an example. That is wrong. Who is the CEO of MS? I don't know. Yeah, so in the question, it was connected to fishing. So maybe if the question specifically says that, in this question, you don't have to say that loud. Okay. Right. So I will leave it there. Water, sunlight will not be land, because sunlight and all are unlimited. Land has to be economic. It has to be limited. Innovator, not really. You have to be specific. Can you all just go to the marking scheme and tell me what are they given in the marking scheme? I don't think they have given CEO and stuff like that. Check 2016 question number 1. Open your past paper book. You should have a past paper book. What have they given for entrepreneur? Opening of a new sea market, right? So if it's a let's say fisherman related thing, and a founder of a let's say a fishing store, something like that. Land, you can give land itself, but you say plot of land there. River for land, fine. Okay, right, done. So that will give you 4 marks there. Should you define? Not needed. Just have they're asking what? No, you don't have to define. Then question number 2. Okay. Now look at this. In what ways does a free market economy differ from a central planned economy? So they are kind of asking you to show the difference between a market economy and a central planned economy. Right. So question verb is differ. It may be like differentiate, show the differences. How many marks? 4 marks. In what ways does a free market differ? So can you break down the question and tell me, Lama, how many points should I write? 4-mark question, differ, right? 4 points, right? I need to ideally show around 4 differences. 2 points each is not going to be enough now. You need to show 4 differences. So now, how do you show those 4 differences? Now, since the question verb here say Lama, it differ, even if you have drawn a table and given, they would have still given marks. But personally, I don't prefer this table Lama because the table format is very babyish. Right? It's telling the examiner, look here, I'm like a grade 6 kid. I will draw a table and show a private ownership, public ownership, price mechanism, planning mechanism. Because it sets the, not that they will mark it completely wrong, but then the examiner will thinks of you as what? You are a, small fellow who knows all this small stuff. You need to act like you know much more than that. So how I will give my answer is like, maybe for a question like this. Now, there are clear differences. So I will give it in 4 points, but 4 long points, right? I'll give my answer like this. I will, for example, I will say, right? It's you don't have to draw a table now. So I will say, for example, okay, a market economy, a market economy uses price mechanism to answer the basic economic problems, or I can say for decision coordination problems, while a command economy uses planning mechanism. Anna, that is 1 point. I am not writing a childish answer like drawing a table. I'm not drawing a table and saying price mechanism, planning mechanism. I'm writing a proper point saying, look here, a market economy, right, for their decision coordination, or in other words, to answer their basic economic problems, they use the price mechanism, while a command economy uses planning mechanism. So likewise, now that will give you my 1 mark. So that means you need to write 4 points like that. I'm not writing, you can write characteristics of a market in 1 para, command, another para. But here, when you have very obvious differences, this format is better. Now, for example, if you are distinguishing between, let's say, okay, let's say, for example, question says, okay, distinguish between income effect and substitution effect. So then when you're distinguishing between income effect and substitution effect, you can't write like this. You don't have like 4 differences. Then what you will do is, Lama, you will write 1 para for income effect, 1 para for substitution effect. But here, in this question, Lama, when you can clearly see like obvious differences, this is this is that, then instead of writing that para format, give it like this. It is better. When there are no obvious differences, giving it in that fun is okay. Right now, for example, if they say distinguish between economic resources and non-economic resources, maybe for a question like that, para about economic resources, para about non-economic resources, fine. But here, when there are obvious resources, obvious differences, give it this way. I feel it's a better format. Okay. So then the other points, I'm not going to write in detail, but you all just tell me. So you can say, market economy has private ownership. Command economy has public ownership. What else can you say? Market economy has consumer sovereignty. Here you can say no consumer sovereignty. Market economy lamai is profit oriented, or you can say self-interest. Command economy lamai, your motive is social welfare. Right? Then you can say market economy, there is high levels of competition. Here there is low levels of competition. So you have to write proper points. That consumer sovereignty is I think there is a question on the paper also, we'll come to that, is the power that the consumer has to decide what they want. So if the consumer has the power to decide what they want, choose what they want, that is what we call consumer sovereignty. Labor intensive, I will not put that. Not a centralized, decentralized decision making that goes with my private price mechanism and planning mechanism. Freedom of choice, yes, you can add. And one more thing is for this questions, make your points. Now you all know around 6-7 differences. Okay. So when you all know around 6-7 differences, try to make your point different. Now, for example, consumers having choice and consumer sovereignty. Instead of that being two things, you can connect it and right. And because of consumer choice only, there is consumer sovereignty. So you don't write it as 2 points. Then now, for example, if you're writing, let's say, profit motive and self-interest, don't break it as 2 points. Put it as 1 point. If you have more points, if you have like 6-7 points, don't write similar points, is what I'm saying. If you have two things that are similar, connect it together. Yes, maybe government role you can write. Okay, right. So question is easy. I'm leaving it up to you. I'm just helping you with the format, right? So invisible hand will come to it when we come across a question. Would I recommend drawing a table here? Like I said at the start, I won't recommend. Okay. Doesn't my company require me to work 45 hours a week? No, we don't count the hours. Why is money not considered capital in economics? It's not what, it has to be not. Yeah. So why is capital? Why is money not capital? Now look at this. The question is a 4-mark question. The question verb is why. Now I don't think in my previous this thing there, I mentioned the word why. Right? Maybe I'll add that also. Where do you think, when you say why, do we write points? Do we write detail points? Do we put in a para? Where do you think the why comes in? The why kind of a question. I think the why kind of thing comes somewhere around near this briefly explain kind of place. Somewhere in para, not short points. It's more like small paragraphs is what I will put, right? So then coming to this question, then why is money not capital? And this was the second one. And then the third one, what we are just doing, they're saying, why is money not capital in economics? So then for 4 marks, now you have to explain this now. So how I will start this question now, I will not be one more thing in the past paper class. I am not dictating answer word by word for you to write down. You're expected to do the question at home and come. If you want a dictation word by word, look at the marking scheme. Marking scheme has no, I don't have to repeat the same thing. I will explain the question. You have done it and come. You will see where you can improve. You will see, should you change your format? What more can you write? That is what will happen. You won't have time to dictate. You won't have time to write word by word when I'm explaining. That will be too fast. Then you'll be like, sir, can you show this again, sir? Can you show that again? So that is because you have not done the question. You do the question and come. I am just explaining, right? Making it very clear. Otherwise, expectations don't match. Otherwise, you will be, scolding this fellow. He's going too fast. We can't do anything. Do the question and come. It won't be too fast. Right. So why is money not considered capital? I'll just tell you how I will answer this, right? So first, I will start off with talking about what is capital. So I will say capital in economics are the what? Are the man-made resources that aid in the production process or that help produce goods and services. So these include, these mostly include, let's say, tangible assets such as buildings, machinery, equipment, etc. And I'll just give a small intro in my words, what is capital. Then I will talk about what is money. So then now I will say, money is not a productive asset. Now, capital is a productive asset. A productive asset means with that you can produce something. Now, you can't produce something with money. No, I can't do this class with money. For me to do this class, I need a table, chair, laptop, my screen, all of that. I can't do the class with money. So capital is a productive asset. So I will say, look here, money is not a productive asset. It is not a productive asset. You can't, or productive asset, you can say productive resource. You cannot produce a good with money. Money is what? Money is merely a medium of exchange. So money can be used to buy capital. Money is not capital. With money, I can buy a laptop. I can buy a table and a chair. I can buy, let's say, a Wi-Fi connection. With money, I can't produce goods. But with money, I can use that money as a medium of exchange and buy assets. That assets or that capital I buy is what will be used to produce goods and services. So you have to make that very clear. Money is not a productive asset. Money is merely a medium of exchange. Money can be used to buy capital. That capital is what will produce the good and service. So you can say money is simply a financial or a monetary asset. Money is not really capital, because in economics, capital is something that is a productive. Capital is something that will directly help in producing a good. Money doesn't directly help with producing a good. Money is only something that will help you buy capital. Capital is what will help you produce it. So that story you will have to put it. So ideally, I will feel like a format, instead of putting, let's say, everything into one para, since it's a 4-mark question, there is no exact rule now, but I will recommend is you break it into 2 paras. So write enough content so that you get around 2 marks, 2 marks each. What exactly you should write is what I explained. You can say, you don't have to say money is financial capital. Don't put it there. Don't use the word capital. Okay. So you can refer the marking scheme. Your note, my theory note also has a thing, but break it down. Cool. Right. Liquidity, don't have to write too much about it. Again, that's a little bit about liquidity if you want, but don't. Okay, next one. What is an entrepreneur? Why do entrepreneurs play a key role in a market economy? 4-mark question. There are 2 subparts. So how do you think this will be broken down, Laman? What is an entrepreneur? A small kind of a definition, no? So maybe around 1 mark for this or 2 marks for this. I don't know. It's a total 4-mark question. But for what is an entrepreneur, will they give 1 mark or will they give 2 marks? I'm not very sure. Why do entrepreneurs play a key role? Now, if they give 1 mark for this, they will give 3 marks for this because it's a 4-mark question. If they have allocated 2 marks for what is an entrepreneur, then they will give 2 marks for this. Now, in the A-level paper, when you are sitting in the exam hall, you don't know the exact breakdown of these sub-questions. You know overall the question has 4. Then what do you do, Lamai? Now, what do you do? Now, what is an entrepreneur? Do you write a definition that it will give you 1 mark, or do you write a bit more detailed one that can give you 2 marks? You always write for the higher mark, Lamai. So you think, right, in your head, you think that for this one, they are giving you 2 marks. For this one, they are giving you 3 marks. Think of the higher one. For both, think of the higher one. So then, for what is an entrepreneur, you need to write what is an entrepreneur, something that will give you 2 marks. Now, for example, if you, let's say, just give a small 1 line, I don't think that will be worth 2 marks, right? So then you might have to go a little bit more in detail. So who is an entrepreneur? An entrepreneur is the person, or we can say is an entity, who combines all the factors of production in order to, let's say, produce a good or service. And then you can touch a little bit. An entrepreneur bears risk. He comes up with innovations. And you can product. Don't go too much because you might have to use some of those points in the next one. And you will just keep it there. So what I will recommend is maybe like a 2 to 3 line small para. So I don't have to teach you what is an entrepreneur. You come up with your one, right? And then, so then if they have to allocate 2 marks so that, Anna, you have got that entire 2 marks. Then the next part of the question, why do entrepreneurs play a key role in a market economy? What do you think we can write this, Lama? What are the entrepreneurs' role in, forget about market economy, in the economy? What is their role, Lama? What do they do? Right? So you can write points like what? You can say, Lama, an entrepreneur comes up with innovative ideas, right? He comes up with innovation to solve problems, to solve market gaps that are there. He comes up with that. Anna, you can say that. That can be a main role. A policy decision making, I don't think is a role in a market economy. They're asking, why do entrepreneurs play a key role in the market? So maybe try to show how an entrepreneur is being helpful in a market economy. Now, for example, entrepreneur taking risk, or let's say entrepreneur making decisions, that is not really helping a market economy. Right? So maybe yes, coming up with innovation, yes. Right? Maybe you can also say, Lamai, he increases what? An entrepreneur, the more and more entrepreneurs you have, increases your resource utilization, right? Don't you think an entrepreneur, Lamai, will create more job opportunities? He will use more and more capital. Your resources get utilized efficiently. Anna, you can talk about that. Anna, right? And then, Lamai, because of entrepreneurship, what can you say? And maybe because of innovations, you can connect the standard of living point to this. Right? Because of innovations, he'll come up with new things. People's standard of living can improve. So write, Lamai, more complete points. But what else can you say? Right? Maybe, Lamai, an entrepreneur, you can even, this one, an entrepreneur, Lamai, creates competition in the market because of entrepreneurship. Then when there are competition, Lamai, what happens? The quality of goods increase, right? Quality of goods increase. So then, and having competition means, Lamai, there is choice in the market, consumer sovereignty. Anna. Now, when you're writing points, Lamai, don't write vague. For example, bearing a profit or loss, Lamai, or bearing risk, I don't think is a point for this, right? Because the question is not asking, what are the characteristics or what are the functions of an entrepreneur. If you say, what are the functions of an entrepreneur, you can say, okay, an entrepreneur makes decisions. He combines the factors of production. He bears a risk. But the question is not worded like that. The question says, right? Question says, why do entrepreneurs play a key role in the market economy? So you might have to be more specific there. Right? What are the key roles there? And also one more thing, be careful with the answers that are there in the past paper books. Right? These past paper books are not always the original marking scheme. So past paper books, whatever publication, some fellow is in charge, he is the fellow in charge of typing those answers. Sometimes in these past, I'm not saying the answers are wrong here in a way. Sometimes the answers in the past paper books are not the most correct answers. They're sometimes too babyish, too simple. The marking scheme might have much more detailed stuff. So what I will recommend here, right? Because you're not, remember, I'm teaching you not to forget that 75. I'm teaching you to go to that 90, 95 point there. So you need to show the exam, look here, I am not a stupid fellow. I'm not a babyish guy who is writing these simple points. I know my stuff. I'm writing something much more. This thing. Yes, you can say entrepreneurs play a role on deciding what goods to produce. Yes, you can. So come up with proper points on how an entrepreneur, how, and connect that with the market economy. How does the entrepreneur kind of help a market economy? That's what you have to do. So you say an entrepreneur in a market economy, he will come up with innovations. So when he comes up with new innovations, new products that can improve people's standard of living, that can be a point. You can say an entrepreneur, he utilizes the resources, he creates job opportunities, he uses the capital resource, he uses the land that is available. So he improves the overall resource utilization of an economy. Another point. Then you can say, because of entrepreneurship, there is competition in the market. When there is competition in the market, what happens? The quality of the goods increase. And also because there is competition, now there is choice for the consumers. There is consumer sovereignty that is out there. So write proper detailed points is what I'm trying to tell you, without writing these vague points like entrepreneur makes decisions. Entrepreneur makes decisions is not really a thing that will help to this. It's contributing GDP. Yes, you can write. You can refer to the marking scheme now. There might be different points in the marking scheme, but I'm just giving you some points on my end. So don't write answers like a baby. That's what I'm trying to recommend. Creates employment. Yes, that is connected to point number 2, improving resource utilization. Okay. Right. Question 5. Why is private property and protection of property rights critical to the success of a market economy? Do you remember I explained this story when we did a MCQ last week? Yes. Remember? Right. So I'll summarize the story in case you can't remember. So what are property rights, Lamai? So you start with talking about what is private property rights. So what are private property rights? Private property rights are, Lamai, the right that you have to maybe use your property, sell your property, modify your property, the right that you have to do that. That is what you call a property right, to buy it, sell it, modify it, do whatever, the right. So why is property rights critical to a market economy? Because if there are no private property rights, then there will be no production, no one will produce. Now, if I can't prove, now let's say, for example, there is a note in your theory class, dude. If you take a farmer, if a farmer can't prove that this land is his, he will never go and cultivate lamai. Because let's say a farmer will not randomly go and cultivate in a land because someone else can come and say this land is mine and taken. So unless the farmer definitely knows that this is his land, he can prove it as long as he has the property right, then only he will produce lamai. If there is no production lamai, there is no exchange. Right. So forget about exchange. If there is no production, there is no trade lamai. So can an economy function without any goods being produced, without any goods being traded? No. Anna, that is one reason why it's this. You can also talk about this lamai. For example, savings. Now, just imagine you go and save money in, let's say, Sampath Bank. Okay. 1 year later, you go to withdraw that money. Let's say today you deposited 100,000 in Sampath Bank. 1 year later, you're going to withdraw that money. And you say, Sampath Bank, here, you remember, I put some money, give me back. What if Sampath Bank asks, what money? When did you put money? I don't know. How are you going to prove that you put money? What are you going to show? You're going to show your passbook, no? For a bank account, you get a passbook. Now you have digital passbook, different story. But you all know that physical passbook, small one. So that passbook, that is the document that is giving you the property right. Now just imagine no one had passbooks. You didn't have passbooks. There is nothing called account number. You went and gave money to the bank account. 1 year later, when you go and ask, they are like, what money? So there will not even be savings if there is no proper property rights. So if there are no property rights, no one will save money because they are not sure what will happen. And also, if you have common property rights, what happens when you have common property rights? Like, for example, remember I've told you all your table and chair in school. What happens? Your study table at home and your study table in school are two different things. Your study table at home is private property. You can prove that this is your table. Study table at school, common property. That is everyone's table. Today you sit here, tomorrow you will sit somewhere else. Next year you will go to another class. Then what happens? When you have common property, the property gets exploited. No? Don't you think in your school table, you have sometimes paste chewing gum under the table? You sharpen your pencil and put the dirt there. In your school classroom, you will sharpen your pencil and throw it. Some people, have you seen some fellows, they put their lunch sheet and all and go. And then that has, it has all the worms come and it's so disgusting. Yeah, some of you all, you all are like, car stepper in Sigide, you all write your partner's names also. Usually the fellow doesn't write, other people write for you, this one plus this one plus this one, a heart is there, arrow is there. On Tipex, you all start writing on the table, all of that you all. But at home, your home study table, nice study table. You never scribbled anything on Tipex. You have never, at home, you don't sharpen your pencil and you don't throw it on the floor. No? What's the difference? The difference is the property right, At home, it is private property. At home, when you have private property, that is your one. So you will take care of it. But in school, that is common property. So when you have common property, it gets exploited. The same story even with a beach. Now, take for example, a beach in Sri Lanka. Why do you think people are throwing garbage, paper bottles, this, that? You might even find condoms on the beach sometimes. Right? Why? Common property. They'll just do what? They keep on exploiting that story. So that is why private property is needed. So you can go through the answer, right? I'm not going through the answer word by word. A collective ownership is Islam. So collective ownership or common property means the same thing, right? So the answer is there in your past paper book. It's there in your notes also. I'm just explaining the answer. You word by word, if you want to answer, you'll have to look at the past paper book. How does trade get affected? Because there will not be production. When you don't have private property rights, no one will produce. Everyone is scared. So if no one is producing, then how can you trade? What are you going to trade? There's nothing being produced. So there won't be production, there won't be trade, there won't be savings, your resources will get exploited. All of that is there. Is there in the tute? Yes, if you have my unit 1 tute, it is there. Okay. Right. So that's what you write for number 5. Right. I know we haven't done much. Then we have question 2. Shall we continue from this next class? So next class we'll try and we'll finish unit number 1. No? We are not going to drag it to the class after that. So next class, even if it goes until 12 in the midnight, we will stay and we will finish unit number 1. Right. So I will end it there. What I want you all to do, you all have this question verb idea now in mind. I want you, Lamai, to do the rest of the questions. Okay. Do the rest of the questions. Have this question verb story in mind. Break the question down like how I broke. Don't write Baba type answers. You're not a grade 6 student. You're not a grade 7 student. You're an A-level student targeting for a good island or a district rank. All of you all can get there. Right? Believe in yourself. Right, thinking that you are the econ expert. You are the best economist out there in Sri Lanka and you are writing a paper. You're not writing some nonsense. Okay. So with that, I will end the class. Today's recording, I'm not very sure when I will upload. If I find some free time, I will upload. If not, no recording until I find free time. All right. So see you and bye-bye. Welcome.